Listen to this short story called Time Traveler's Bench to practice your English listening skills. Repeat the story once while reading, and then practice without reading. We have helpful vocabulary in the description. Ready? Let's start.
Lily and Max were best friends who did everything together. They had explored every corner of their small town, from the old library to the hidden paths in the woods. But there was one place they hadn't yet visited, the park at the edge of town, where an old, weathered bench sat beneath a giant oak tree. The bench had always intrigued them. It was said to be as old as the town itself, a gift from the town's founders. People often said the bench had a special energy, but no one knew exactly why. One sunny afternoon, with nothing else to do, Lily and Max decided to visit the park and see the bench for themselves. As they approached the bench, they noticed how worn it looked. The wood was smooth and polished from years of use, and the metal armrests were decorated with intricate designs that had faded over time. The bench seemed ordinary enough, but there was something about it that made them both feel strangely excited. "Do you think it's really special?" Max asked, running his hand over the backrest. Lily shrugged. "I don't know, but it's worth a try. Let's sit down and see what happens." They sat on the bench together, side by side. For a moment, nothing happened. The park was quiet, with only the sound of birds chirping in the trees. Lily and Max exchanged a glance, both thinking the same thing. Maybe the bench was just a bench after all. But then something changed. The air around them seemed to shimmer, and the light filtering through the oak tree's leaves grew brighter. Lily and Max looked at each other in surprise, feeling a strange sensation wash over them, like a gentle breeze that carried more than just air. "What's happening?" Lily whispered, her heart pounding. "I don't know," Max replied, his eyes wide. "But I think we're seeing something." Suddenly the park around them began to shift and change. The trees grew taller, their branches stretching out like arms. The grass became greener, and the flowers bloomed in vibrant colors. The air was filled with the scent of fresh earth and blossoms, and the sunlight seemed warmer, more golden. "It's beautiful," Lily said, gazing around in wonder. "But where are we?" Max stood up, looking around. "I think we're still in the park, but it's different. It's like we've traveled to another time." Lily looked at him, her eyes wide with realization. "You mean we've traveled to the past?" Max nodded slowly, a smile spreading across his face. "I think so. The bench, it must be some kind of time machine." They spent the next hour exploring the park, marveling at how everything looked in the past. The old oak tree was smaller, its branches still growing, and the flowers were different species that neither of them recognized. There were no buildings around, just open fields and a clear blue sky. "This is amazing," Lily said as they returned to the bench. "But how do we get back?" Max looked at the bench thoughtfully. "Maybe if we sit down again, it will take us back to our own time." They sat down together once more, holding hands this time, just in case. The same shimmering sensation enveloped them, and the park began to shift again. The trees returned to their original size, the flowers changed back, and the familiar buildings reappeared in the distance. When the light faded, they were back in their own time, sitting on the old weathered bench. The park was just as it had been before, quiet and peaceful. "That was incredible," Lily said, her voice filled with excitement. "We actually traveled through time." Max nodded, grinning from ear to ear. "I can't believe it. We have to tell someone. Or maybe we should keep it a secret." Lily thought for a moment, then smiled. "Let's keep it our secret. This bench is special, and I think it's meant just for us." From that day on, Lily and Max visited the bench regularly, exploring different times and places together. They traveled to the past, watching the town grow from a small village to the bustling place it was today. They saw people from history, witnessed important events, and even glimpsed their own ancestors. But one day something unexpected happened. They sat on the bench as usual, ready to embark on another adventure. But this time the shimmering sensation felt different, stronger. The light around them grew brighter than ever before, almost blinding. They felt the bench shift beneath them, and when the light faded, they found themselves in a place they didn't recognize. The park was gone. Instead, they were in a busy city, surrounded by tall buildings and bustling people. Cars zoomed by on the streets, and the air was filled with the sounds of honking horns and chatter. The oak tree was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a tall, shiny skyscraper. "Where are we?" Lily asked, her voice trembling slightly. Max looked around, confused. "I don't know, this isn't the past." Lily's heart skipped a beat as a realization dawned on her. "Max, what if this is the future?" Max's eyes widened. The future, but how far in the future? They wandered through the city, marveling at the advanced technology and the strange fashion of the people. Everything was so different from their own time, yet somehow familiar. The buildings were sleek and modern, the streets clean and orderly. But there was something missing, a sense of warmth, of connection. As they explored, they began to notice something strange. The people around them seemed distant, detached, as if they were all caught up in their own worlds. No one smiled or laughed, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. The city was full of life, yet it felt empty. "I don't like it here," Lily said quietly. "It doesn't feel right." Max nodded in agreement. "We should go back." They hurried back to the spot where the bench had been, but to their dismay it was gone. The place where it had stood was now a patch of concrete, with no sign that the bench had ever been there. "Max, what do we do?" Lily asked, panic rising in her voice. Max looked around frantically. "I don't know, maybe it's somewhere else in the city." They searched for hours, but the bench was nowhere to be found. Exhausted and scared, they sat down on a nearby curb, trying to figure out what to do. "What if we're stuck here?" Lily whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Max put his arm around her, trying to stay calm. "We'll find a way back, Lily, we have to." Just as they were about to give up hope, they heard a familiar voice, a soft, gentle whisper like the one they had heard when they first sat on the bench. "Look for the light," the voice said. Lily and Max looked around, confused. "What light?" Max asked, but the voice didn't respond. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Lily saw it, a faint glowing light in the distance, coming from an alleyway between two buildings. "There!" she cried, grabbing Max's hand. "That must be it!" They ran towards the light, their hearts pounding with hope. As they reached the alleyway, they saw it, the bench glowing softly in the darkness, just as it had before. Without hesitation, they sat down together, holding hands tightly. The light around them grew brighter, and they felt the familiar sensation of the world shifting around them. When the light faded, they found themselves back in the park, sitting on the old weathered bench. The oak tree stood tall above them, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. The city was gone, replaced by the quiet, peaceful park they knew so well. Lily and Max looked at each other, relief flooding through them. "We're home," Lily whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. Max nodded, squeezing her hand. "We're home." They sat in silence for a while, just enjoying the comfort of being back in their own time, but as the sun began to set, they knew it was time to go. As they stood up to leave, the bench gave one last gentle shimmer, as if saying goodbye. They smiled at each other, knowing that their adventure had come to an end. But as they walked away, Max couldn't help but wonder, "Lily, do you think we'll ever find that future again?" Lily thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't know, Max, but maybe it's better if we don't." And with that, they left the park, hand in hand, ready to face whatever adventures the future might bring.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to repeat this story several times to practice and watch our other lessons and stories on the channel. Thank you for listening.